Leah is going to bed. I'm like, was that really necessary? Like
all third person statuses. I love it.
No wonder there's like a whole generation with egos. It's like Leah is going to bed. Leah is going shopping. It's like Leah can just log off for like 5 minutes and not let me know where she's going.
Right.
Welcome, guys, to the podcast. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Given the state of things, I think.
Yeah, putting together some Legos and living the dream.
Where was my invite? Why wasn't I invited?
I'm a very selfish Lego putter together.
Okay, well, you know what?
Call yourself.
I do.
I'll remember that later. I will upload a clip and tag you guys and be like, look at all the Legos I got.
He has a lot of Legos now.
Yeah.
I feel like he's bought a lot.
This year is. I get the ones that are like you can stand them up and put them places like New York City.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like I don't like the ones that are like the figures go everywhere. I'd rather have it like set.
The newest one is?
Oh, Baby Yoda.
Baby Yoda. It's so cute, though. I'm not gonna lie, it's very cute.
Are you a big fan of the Star Wars?
I am. I love it, but
I am now. But it took me years to actually watch the movies. It's actually terrible. I think the first time I watched them was probably, I don't know, like 6 years ago. Like I was like old enough that I should have seen them multiple times. But yeah.
I'm not crazy like retcon canon stuff, but I definitely like to watch what I can. Like, you know, like
I feel old. I kind of feel old with the way I said that. I was like, "Are you interested in the Star Wars?" And so do you watch Star Wars? It's like no. It's like I feel like one of those, and I get it because we're getting older. But it's like one of those people. It's like, do you play the Minecraft? You know, like, you mean just Minecraft, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, like that. It's I'm the uncle now. That's like. My uncle over there says the Minecraft. I'm like,
I play the Animal Crossing.
We play the music. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
You guys play the music, right?
Yeah. And we're like the same. It's full circle because I'm sure I was when I was younger, it'd be like my nan when you go over to. So I used to go to my nan's right after school because she only lived really close by, and she'd be like, "Are you going to go on the MSN and talk to the buddies?" And I'm like, "Number one, Nan, the MSN is fine, but the buddies." You can just call them friends. She's like, you have friends? I'm like, leave me alone, Nan.
Oh my gosh.
Smarter child.
MSN though, like I really miss MSN. I'm not even kidding. That consumed my life though. Maybe it's a good thing it's gone.
I feel like text messaging is pretty close.
It is, but it's I don't know. It's not
no, see, I'm gonna argue with you there, Jordan, because in a text message, no one can send you that goddamn emoji of the kid sending you a splash balloon every time with like 50 times, and like every time you open the screen it's like an old lady laughing like and I'm just like, why did you send this 50 times to me?
I forgot about all of those.
I don't know if I had enough friends to get those.
That's fair.
Yeah. Oh my.
See, what we'll do, Jordan, is after this interview's done, I will send you a YouTube link where they show all of these emojis and all these things. Well, I guess we call them emojis now. That all these things happened. But yeah, I agree with you. I kind of miss MSN, but the thing that kind of converted from Facebook to MSN, which I'm kind of glad is gone. But remember at the time when Facebook used to have is, so people would like, before we were all involved with politics and everyone's views mattered, it was like,
I know. I always get those like memory ones of like stuff that I posted 8 years ago or whenever, 9 years ago, 10 years ago.
Oh yeah, it's so weird because it's just like the text just starts and you're like, I know. Oh yeah, the is. They take the is out. Yeah.
You forget at times where it's like, I don't remember being this bad at grammar, and it's like you weren't. Facebook was, but it's funny because so kind of like Jordan in a way, I didn't have a lot of people that would engage with your like comments or posts. So you could say something like Brian Tobin is graduating and it's like 2 likes. And then it's like, again, it'd be like Leah is going to bed, text or call. I'm like, wait, if you're going to bed, why would someone text or call? And it'd be like 50 people like, what's up, girl? Like, let me text you later. And I'm just there like, she's going to bed. Why are you
got bed.
What is going on here? I graduated. I graduated.
It's so funny.
And then they'd always put the space period. You know,
Oh,
always had to have the spaces in between punctuation.
What is it?
They'd have a space, but before all the punctuation. That's how people used to write their statuses. Is blah 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 space period.
Yeah.
Or, you know.
Weird.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because we grew up on, say, MSN, where like you would be able to, I think I used to be able to put the lightning in between your names so that would flash, right? Like it was like, I think, comma or like in quotations, LI.
Right.
Okay. Login. But then when they came up with like the personal message underneath, I think I was maybe one of the first ones that I'm not proud to admit it, but a lot of people would use like lyrics to songs. And I was like, oh, that's deep, man. So you'd go back, and I think I still have screenshots somehow from people's MSN things. And like some people would have like Kelly Clarkson's like Miss Independent as it, or
I love it.
Yeah. Or like, I don't know, Shania Twain's like some lyric from Shania Twain. I'm like, okay, that was our version of when you go on Twitter now or Instagram and someone puts a quote around something like, Christina Aguilera's like, I'm stronger than ever, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, easy. You're just going to the mall and you just had to put on a mask.
Yeah.
Relax.
I think all the people that I had on MSN were like, rotted, don't text the cell. That was like the quote that everyone.
Is that your friend group?
That is normal. No. That's normal. I had people that would say, had a rough day, call me later. I'm like, who's going to call someone who's had a rough day? It's like,
I don't want to hear about it.
Like, hey, Danielle, how are you doing? I told you not to call me. I'm like, well, actually, your MSN. No, but not you. I meant my real friends. I'm like, well, tell your real friends.
Yeah. And what does later mean? Like in 5 minutes? Or like, when did you post this status? Is it later now? When?
Yeah. Even worse if they haven't been on like 3 or 4 years, and then it finally clues into you. Like, man, they've been gone to bed for a while. It's like, no, they blocked. I'm like, oh, okay, sad reality. But I just thought she was just gone to bed and never woke up. I was a little bit concerned. It's like, Brian, you see her every day at school. It's like, yeah, but that's different. That's different.
She's sleepwalking, actually.
Yeah,
you didn't know.
She's getting better grades than me. And I graduated. Let's talk a little bit, of course. We can go all over the place, anytime, anywhere. We'll probably do it again in this interview. But tell me a little bit about how you guys formed. Like, was it a kind of a school project? Did you guys one day just say like, hey, you can play this instrument, I can play this instrument, let's team up? And one was like, is busy on Facebook.
No, we met in a choir. Actually, no, we met in a drive-through at McDonald's.
Oh no, true.
She was drunk walking through the drive-through. And I was working and very annoyed by the people knocking on the window at like 2:00 in the morning.
One of my friends was going to one of the local music places for lessons, and I guess that's how she knew you.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh yeah, I know him, that's Jordan. I was like, hi. Like I remember. I wasn't like I was drunk though, but
you were definitely drunk.
I definitely was. But yeah, that's true. That is how we first met.
But then she ended up attending lessons in the same place, and I was teaching and doing some recording and stuff there. And so we both ended up joining a choir together. And choir is like there's 5 or 6 of us.
5 or 6 of us, yeah.
At any given time.
We would like sometimes just create our own harmonies. It was very much like just winging it and singing the songs that we really liked. It was fun, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we did a song together one day, and that was really it. You know, like people are like, "Oh, your voices blend so well together," and I was already playing downtown, and I was like, "Why don't you come join me for a set?" And then we ended up playing since basically 10 years.
Yeah.
Way too long. I've been at this way too long.
If I had only known then.
I know, right?
This is the interview that's like, it's like, you guys, you had Quote the Raven on, right? I'm like, yeah, they broke up like 5 minutes after your interview.
They actually just left. They logged off.
Yeah, they're done. I'm like, oh, that's so sad. It's like, am I the actual podcast now that breaks up groups? Because that'd be interesting.
Kirsten is rotted. Don't text us out.
Yeah, exactly. You see like future episodes where it's like Brian has Shani Canuck on. It's like, no, my God, please don't, Brian. Please don't break them up. I'm like, it's time.
They've had a long run.
Oh,
it's over.
It's like those talk shows that just cause the drama. Like you just watch them and you're like, oh my God, please don't ask him that question. Like, yeah.
I love, you know what? In fairness, I love those interviews. Like I always tell people off the hop. Now I didn't say it to you guys because I feel like it's kind of implied being Newfoundlanders. But like when it's an act, say from either the States or Toronto or just outside of Newfoundland, I'm like, listen, there's going to be moments where I'm going to laugh at my own joke. If you're okay with that, cool. If you're not, like, let me know afterwards that I look stupid. But I'm like, I'm not a TMZ. I'm not here to get you rattled on Twitter or like, and they're like, what do you mean by rattled? I'm like, I mean like upset. I'm not here to get you upset. Like, I'm not here for the quote of Twitter where it's like, Brian had Bob Saget on and he told Bob Saget he was a loser. And then it's like, that's the quote that they use. It's like, no.
Headline.
Oh,
yeah. Like, because we've actually had interviews in the past where someone will say, like, can you cut that out? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Like, don't worry about it. It's pre-recorded. Or even if it is live, I'm like, all right, like maybe 3 people might look at that and be offended. But at the same time, it's like, I can cut it out. But
yeah.
To each their own. Like I love those, like you said, the ones that do the TMZ moments. Like I have a niece that watches a lot of reality TV now, old reality TV, which I think is kind of weird, but anything that she can find on YouTube. So it's like, you know, like the nanny, like the one that the nan comes over and like somehow arranges the whole family in like one episode.
Nanny 911?
Like, yeah, there you go. And it's like arranges the whole family in an episode. I'm like, oh my God. Great. But you know, the moment you leave and the cameras go off, that kid's going to be like, she's gone. That's
Yeah.
And the parents are never going to follow what she told them to.
Yeah. It's like in your own mind of bringing it modern day. It's almost like seeing a TikTok post where it's like the nanny leaves like, oh, you guys, wonderful kids. See you later. And then next minute it's just like, it's time to fucking lose it. And then you just go like, it's just like, she hasn't even left for 5 minutes. She's literally outside the door. She can come back anytime and whoop your ass. It's like, too late. Cameras are gone. She's wrapped up here.
But that's reality TV in a nutshell, though,
I know.
Isn't it?
You never know what's true and what's not.
No, and sometimes they're like the good side of it is sometimes when you see documentaries like on bands, like I know I haven't watched them. I've always said I want to, but it's like I've seen one on Oasis, and I like Oasis's like background of like the 2 brothers don't get along, and I'm like it's interesting to me, but also kind of heartbreaking because I'm like you guys made such great music, why can't you? But I get it. If you don't get along with your brother, it's hard to even get along. It's hard to be in a band with your brother if you don't get along. But there are ones like the Backstreet Boys that I like, and you'll see them get on Nick's case of like, yeah, this guy sometimes can be a real douche, and he just wants what's good for the band, but he can come across like an asshole. And I'm like, I still like them, but it's just the behind the scenes stuff. It's like, oh, this is interesting, but it's not made. Let's put it this way: it's not made in like the Kim Kardashian way, where it's like, I have a pool and I love our pool, but I've never been in our pool. And it's like Kanye just making fun of her. It's like, oh my God, our pool. I'm like, yes, Kanye, it's time to leave.
I can't. When reality TV turned into mostly that's when I was like, I'm out. I used to love Survivor and all that stuff. But it was like, after that, it was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done.
I don't know. Sometimes the drama is entertaining, but sometimes it's just like, okay. Even if it's scripted, like I feel like people can do better. You know, I'm like, you can do better if this is scripted. You can do better. Yeah. You know,
I feel like it's a double-edged sword because I'm coming at it from a standpoint of someone who grew up watching like wrestling, which is totally scripted and totally like you kind of know. Yeah, there you go. Just pointing.
I wanted to be a wrestler growing up. Like
that's what he would be.
Yeah,
do this.
But I love that stuff, and then I would oust people for watching like Young and the Restless and stuff. I'm like, whatever. Like, why are you watching that? And especially The Bachelor. Like to the point when The Bachelor first started or Bachelorette, there were certain points where I'm like, okay, that's a curveball, that's a swerve, that's a little bit like out there. But now it's like almost every season it's like, you've never seen this film before except for on season 3 and season 4 and season 5 and we did this on season 8. And I'm like, yeah, I have seen this done before where she just gets up and leaves with the douche and then you bring in another one. Okay, cool. Like I don't ever expect, like sometimes I'm actually kind of surprised because they always have like the asshole on these and then he somehow stays like to say
forever.
Like till there's like final 5. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're telling me that no one else was going to stick around to watch the other 4 guys, so you had to keep him around.
That's
You're basically telling people that are watching this in their 20s, like, hey, remember that douchebag guy that you got rid of? Maybe keep him around for a little while longer. It's like, no.
Our ratings are really high.
Yeah. He is doing so much, like, he is doing so much damage to your personal life, but the gossip that he brings, it's great.
The TV ratings,
yeah. All those friends that you don't speak to, they would love to hear about this guy, or it's like, or vice versa. It's like this girl that's crazy. Bring her around your friends. You'll catch up since high school. They'll be like, "Are you okay, Jordan?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm good."
But when it comes to like music documentaries, though, like they're always great. I always like to know stuff on like my favorite artists or actors or whatever. But it can ruin how you see them too, which is so sad. It's like I try really hard to like separate the two things, but I find it really difficult. Like if I don't feel like someone's a good person, I find it really hard to like their music. So it's weird how that
it's like a double-edged sword, because I will say this openly, like when I was younger really liked Chris Brown. I liked just he had the dance moves, he had the great tunes, but then as soon as he mixed with the Rihanna whole ordeal, and I like Rihanna too, I was like, oh man, I feel like I'm like in this battle with 2 friends. I don't know them personally at all, but I'm like, which side do I take here? It's like, you can kind of be neutral. I'm like, well, no, because that's so wrong. Like, again, over years, people forget it, but like, it's always kind of, I guess, helpful in a way of, if the person that was affected can look back and be like, hey, that was just a bad time. I don't agree with it, but like, we're cool now. Like, we can still, and I'm like, okay, well then that kind of opens the door to go back and like the act and whatnot. But there are still occasions where you're like, I like the song, but I don't like R. Kelly's Ignition remix. Love it. But R. Kelly, I don't know.
Everyone's, like, how can you not like it? I feel like everyone likes that song.
And sometimes that gives them like and again, saying that sometimes gives them like the double-edged power of like, well, you still like my music, so obviously you like me. It's like, no, I don't like you. It's like, I like
Michael Jackson. There's been a bunch of those over the years, and it's like, the music
I think especially the ones where you can't prove it, or like it's not proven, is really difficult too, because then you're just making a judgment call on what people are saying or what's going around, and it's like, but then you can't help but think about those things when you hear these songs. Like I just find it's really sad sometimes, like especially for the people who probably like may not have done anything wrong, and it just seems to have like a negative light on them. Like that has to be really hard for people, but yeah, it can really affect how I view artists and actors and stuff, depending on
it's like
what they've said or what they've done.
It's like the whole kind of cancel culture. Like I know some stuff, it's like, okay, are you really mad about that from that point? Like, I get things have changed, but even when Britney's documentary came out, like, I've never seen it, because at first I thought it was going to be like actual key people talking about her life, but I've heard that's just kind of like fan perspective. I'm like, well, anyone can do that, but it was like immediately once that came out, it was like on Twitter, it was like, cancel Justin Timberlake. I'm like, oh, why? What happened here? And then he had to come out and apologize. I'm like, okay, so you just forced this guy to apologize. Now, whether it's true or not, it beats me. But at the same point, I'm like, I don't think he had to all the time. But some people would be like, well, yeah, he did. I'm like, okay, but at any point, why are we canceling him now? Like, can we just kind of move on? Like, everyone grows up. These were like 16-year-olds or 18-year-olds in the spotlight. It's kind of like looking back at, like, I guess in our generation, I know they are kind of our generation, but when we get older, we had, say, Bieber and Gomez, and the same kind of stuff happened there. And it's like, all right, I don't overly like Bieber. I still think he has to grow up and stuff. But at the same time, like, dude, you're growing up in the media eyes where if we go out and crash a car, maybe a buddy might say, oh, you're such a douche. Like, how did you crash that car? He goes crash the car. TMZ writes 20 articles of like, what was he doing that day? Was he saying is on Facebook? It's like, like
Justin Bieber is crashing a car.
Justin Bieber was texting, and his text says, I hate Facebook and the is factor. I'm like, I wish he had to save that tweet for a later, not while he was driving, but I totally agree with his premise.
Place and time, man. Place and time.
Yeah, it has to be hard for people growing up in the industry, for sure. I mean, you grow so much especially from that age, like a lot of these child stars and stuff, it's like you're definitely two completely different people by the time you reach your 20s.
And even like between, I think you do a lot of growing up in like 20 to 30, and
no, everyone continues to grow, and your views change, and how you look at things change. And although like I try to look back on when I was growing up in school, and like I was bullied a little bit, not really bad. Like I had a lot of friends, and I was lucky that way. But I try to think, and it's like I can't think of anything terrible that I've done. Like I try to think about it. I'm like, I really don't think I've done anything terrible, but that doesn't mean that I haven't. And it's like, who knows what other people's views of me are, or like something that I did once or said something once. Like I have no idea. And it's kind of scary, because you're like, I don't know. Like, have I done anything that offended somebody before? It's like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I'm sure everyone has, like, at some point.
Yeah, I think it's kind of ironic in a sense that, like, when you look back at things, you want to remember, like, okay, these are the good things I've done, or like, try to remember yourself in a golden light. But there are going to be people that look at you like in a shitty light anyway. And it's kind of like the whole quote, I think someone had posted, it always comes up on the Instagram a lot, and it's a different user every time. I'm like, I get it. Like, stop it. But it's like in someone's story, you're a villain regardless. And I think it's even like How I Met Your Mother. They kind of analogize it a little bit of like when Ted takes, I guess it's the husband's wife, and he's like, man, I don't feel right about this. Like, this is a guy that I know. And it's like, yeah, but in her story, you're the hero. Right. Now in his story, you're the villain. So I'm like, it kind of gives leverage to people that think like, oh, well, I can say what I want and people won't give a shit. It's like, well, no, let's not take it that far. It's just that you could be like the nicest person in high school. You could be the nicest person. You can change. You can like change your opinion on stuff. But some point it's like, I remember in grade 5 when you kicked me down the well. I'm like, okay, number one, it wasn't me, but thanks for holding that grudge for like 20 odd years. And it's like, you're now still holding that grudge against that person, and they could have changed. It's like, yeah, but he still kicked me down a well. I'm like, well, go talk to him. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, he kicked you down the well again. Okay, not everything is great.
Okay, he's the exception. He hasn't grown up.
Yeah. That's the truth. I think, like being able to adapt and learn and grow from everything over the years. Like that's, if you were a bad person, don't be a bad person anymore. Like when someone points it out, it's like, okay, I'm going to learn from that and grow and change. Yeah. And if you don't, then stay canceled, get out. Like, like otherwise I think that's the big thing, and always be willing to just listen to what other people have to say about things. Like that's really all you can do, isn't it? Like,
yeah, when someone gets like the wrong impression though, that's so hard. Like I've had a couple people that I know like don't have a great opinion of me, and
it's because she has a resting bitch face.
True. I do. It just looks like I'm angry all the time. I'm not, I promise.
I was going to say that as soon as you guys joined this conversation, I was like, I haven't even said anything. And she's like looking like she wants to fight me.
It's just confrontation after confrontation.
It's genetic. I can't help it. Okay.
You know what? We had this conversation, I think, we've had Abigail on, was the last one we did live. And, lovely girl. But we had mentioned about the masks and when you wear masks in public, now how hard it is, especially if you are just one of those people that has that default resting bitch face. Like I'm one of these people that no matter what, now in interviews, I try to make it look a little bit more calm, but in person, I'm always like, and then someone's like, why is he mad? And now with a mask on, it's like, is he in pain? Do I need to go help him? And I'm just still like, I'm not mad at you. This is my face. And then they're like, well, that tone says otherwise. I'm like, well, now you pointed it out makes me upset.
Right.
I can't fix it now.
Now I'm having a really terrible day.
I can't go like, no, I'm not mad. I'm happy. And then they're like, your face just went the other way. I'm like, what way do you want it to be?
Yeah, my concentrate, like when I concentrate, it's like, I look like I'm super angry. So funny. Yeah. So funny. I was in school and I had a teacher, and it was for a dance class, and I think I was really mad at myself because when I was younger I did dance and I was pretty decent at it, but I hadn't danced for a long time. So I was getting really frustrated at myself all the time because I just couldn't get the choreography down. And I guess she thought that I was mad at her, like, because I would like really like be mad at myself, but I guess outwardly it looked like I was just pissed off with the class. I don't know. And I remember she had to she brought me outside, and here I was like already, I think I was 22 at this point, so it wasn't like I was young. And I felt so bad because I was like, oh my gosh, she's been teaching this class every day for weeks.
Yeah.
And like she thinks that I hate her, and that's not the truth. And I think even when we had this conversation and it was finished, I was like, I still think that she genuinely thinks I really don't like her. Yeah. And it was like, no matter what I said, I couldn't like convince her. That sucks. Like it stays with you even though it was just like one person. Yeah. It's like when someone gets the wrong impression, it's brutal.
I used to have it in high school where it's like, again, not being the overly popular kid or not being like a part of like a clique per se, but you're just trying to keep to yourself. And like, yeah, like if someone gave you a little bit of shit, I was never like, let's put overly bullied, like to the point where it's like you're going home every day with bruises or like thrown in a locker. Some people have, but it's to the point where like, yeah, people knew about you, people know of you, but you're not in any clique. But at the same time, I wasn't taking anyone's kind of crap. Like, I don't care if you're like the high school hockey player or like the smartest nerd in school. It's like, I get it. Like even at like 16 or 17, it's like, we don't get the whole respect factor of like, I respect your opinion, you respect mine. Let's clue. It's more or less like, no, you're wrong and I'm right, blah, blah, blah. But at this point, it was like, I'm not going to let you walk over me. I'm going to say it and then just walk away or whatever. But one of the teachers told my parents, he's walking around like he has the whole world on his shoulders. I'm like, yeah, maybe it's just because my shoulders are sore. Like maybe it's because we just finished a hockey game and I got belted with like a million, I guess, like hard balls right to the shoulders. I'm like, I'm not carrying anything around. I'm like, it might look that way. Or maybe you just see my resting bitch face and it's like, man, I'm not addressing Brian at all today. He's always mad. I'm like, don't you talk to me, Druken. And he's just like, I was right. He is mad. I'm like, no, just today, because you pointed that out. And now people think that I'm walking around with the whole world on my shoulders. I'm constantly going down the hallway and people are like, he's got the whole world in it. And I'm like, I don't. It's on my shoulders.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. But tell me a little bit, because again, when we were talking about it, when people change over time, and we talked a little bit about, you know, when you were in choir in, I guess, high school and 10 years ago, or 10 or more years ago. But in that growth, were there times that you, I guess, looked at each other and said, okay, like we're growing, we're starting to get bigger? Or was it kind of at first just like a project that you thought, oh, like this is something fun to us to do? Like when did it actually become something you took seriously and then come up with a name for the band and then said, let's do this?
I honestly think it was really gradual. I don't know if we ever had a conversation like that. We wanted to do an album. So we did our first EP, but even that was like a live recording off the floor. So it wasn't like a full studio setup, It wasn't individual tracks, that kind of thing. When we did our second album, I mean, I guess that was probably the launch point. But that was only 2018. So, I mean, we were playing for quite a while before we really like took it on the road and we did a couple Newfoundland tours, I think, but when we really started touring the Atlantic provinces, I think was like 2018.
Basically we were like 2 years trying to come up with a name for what we were doing, and then
we were J&K,
J&K
or JK for a little while.
But yeah, like 2016 we put out Misty Mountains, and that was like, hey, we don't know what we're doing, but we wanted to put out a record. And I think it's one of those things that we didn't realize, but we had a team growing with us the whole time. And like that record, we had talked to Chris Kirby about doing that first record, and he got super busy doing, as he always is, working with a bunch of other people and stuff. And so it just kind of fell, like us working together kind of fell to the side. So we ended up working with Robert Kelly, who's an amazing producer as well. And like Kirsten said, we did all that we did the vocal and the guitars and everything in one take, and had a couple session musicians put some stuff on top of our live take. And that's the record that we put out. And that was like, hey, we did a thing. And
we put all the songs that we have, the only originals we have on an album.
Right.
I think that's all we had at the time. It's like 6 of those. I think we actually finished the 6th one in the studio, basically.
Definitely.
So that was the only songs we had at that point.
But then original. I think Chris heard that record and was like, hey, did you guys forget we were going to work together? And we were like, no, we just thought you were busy.
We just thought you didn't want to work with us. You were making excuses.
It's like
that happens a lot.
It brings it full circle. We're right back to where you're saying the dance teacher was like, do you hate me? It's like, no. He's like, do you guys hate me?
And that's
we thought that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that goes through your mind a lot in the music business because people are busy all the time. So it's like, if someone forgets about you for a couple of weeks, you're like, well, all right, I guess we're done. But that's where like we learn to follow up. Like doing follow up is like amazing. It actually really works in the music industry because when you get 25 emails a minute, you're like, oh, I missed one. So it's so easy to skip over something. But when we started working with Chris, life kind of started falling into place. Like we didn't realize, but my buddy from high school is a graphic design artist, and he did our first record. So we didn't realize we were doing team building right off the bat. It was something that we'd kind of just innately done. Like, oh yeah, like we're gonna hang out with this person who's our friend, and it ended up being like, oh, they have a skill set that actually works with what we do.
Yeah, or like working with Chris and Chris knowing the guys from Sound of Pop, and then
which is our publisher
now, but they wanted to do this whole like writing camp thing. So that's how we got Golden Hour, like our first full-length album. It's like we went over there for 4 days and wrote a bunch of songs with a bunch of different singer-songwriters, and like it just it gradually built. I don't know if we ever really sat down, we're like, this is our career. I guess it's just been like a steady go. So it's like, okay, well, we're full steam ahead at this now. I don't know what I'm going to do if it doesn't work. It's like I'm 28 and I don't really have a whole lot of schooling. So I guess, I don't know. This is it. No.
It's interesting to me because it was one of those, I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head, but I'm glad that you guys are on because otherwise it'd be just me talking to a wall and they'll be like, he's not getting it. But it's like one of those albums, I believe, was really your standpoint. Now, I think it was like maybe 2018 or so that you got nominated for like a Music NL. And it's kind of funny full circle here because when Rhonda now is the one in charge of kind of Music NL, the one that kind of did the PR for me and said, these are all acts that would like to be on. I just thought it was funny because she's a go-getter, which I like. But at the same time, as like she sent me when you were talking about like all the like 25 emails, she just sent me like 20 emails of like, hey, this is Tobin, this is blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, hold on, Rhonda. Like, just simmer. Like, I gotta now try to respond to all these people and not miss one. And then there was times where I was like, did they get a link? I don't know if they got a StreamYard link. Did this person get a link? And then I go back and I'm like, oh God, what if I go live and it's just me? And then I gotta go like, oh my God, I forgot their link.
We're so bad. We're so bad for affirmation. We're like, yeah, we got the link. Of course we're going to be there. But that's just the way we are. Like, we're of the mindset, like, you've got your shit together, so it's on us to get our shit together. So I think that's the way we've been. But everybody's different.
Like,
so,
I feel like I should be. I feel like I should be one of those people that's like, I got to get my stuff together. But like, I know when I send stuff out to PR, like to try to even get acts on, it's almost like there is a time frame where I'm like, I don't know if it's a defeatist personality or it's just more or less like when you get like 20, just say if you got 20 no's, it just starts to dwell on you where it's like, I would send them all out, the basic ones of like, hey, it's like, I'd love to have you on. We can talk about this. And it's like, no, they're a little bit busy now, but reach back in October. I'm like, okay, keep going. And then after a while, you're like, oh my God, just come on my show. And they're like, whoa, that is so unprofessional. I'm like, I'm tired. I'm tired of giving you a big, long spiel. And I guess you get it sometimes in the music industry as well. Like just say different songs that you kind of put out where one PR would be like, just keep it short, just keep it simple. So if you're like, hey, I would love to have Becky G on, is she available? Then they're like, you didn't send us no links, no nothing about your podcast. I'm like, oh, okay, sorry. Send them more. And then there's the other type where it's like you send them all this stuff to like, just ask me if she's available. And I'm like, there's no medium. What do you want from me?
There's no medium. They either want your entire life story or they want it like one link, like it's very, and we deal with that all the time. Like, we've done a couple PR campaigns where it's like these great, beautiful things that we've worked with a team to try and communicate to people. And they're like, I just want to hear one song. And you're like, perfect. Okay.
Don't worry. I am working on it.
Like some people will tell you, oh, they only read the first couple sentences, and then other people will be like, no, they want your full life story. It's like, okay, like I don't know. Do you start with 2 sentences or like the most important, and then just put all the whatever below in case they decide they want more? I don't know.
I find it tricky because so like for someone like myself, so like open, honest about it because people will ask anyway. But I'm a person with disability, so I think sometimes when you ask acts to come on your show, like there was a point in time where never wanted to address disability. It was almost
Right.
like, I am who I am. And as soon as I put in disability, they're going to kind of oust you or be like, without even knowing it, right? So I used to send acts requests and they'd be like, no, they're not available. I'm like, okay, they're not available because of my reach, or they're not available because of my age. Like, what's going on? And I was like, maybe if you put in the disability, sometimes acts will come on because they want to like get known in that community, just show that they're, helpful or a positive image. And sometimes they would. And then I think sometimes even in mid-interview, they'd be surprised, like, hold on, you told me this guy has like strokes and seizures. This guy was like totally fine. I'm like, that's the whole problem with disability. You just see disability and think, right? So it's almost like a double-edged sword even to this day when I send out emails. I'm like, do I put it in when you apply for jobs? Like, do you put it in? So I feel like in your kind of realm with the music side of things, it's almost like, okay, do we send them like 5 of our songs? Do we send them one that we really like? Do we give them our whole background of like, hey, this is how we met. This is interesting story. So then people are like, all right, so we're not just dealing with people who just randomly met and sending us a demo. They have like a whole background. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to me when you went down that rabbit hole in a way, because it's like, I prefer people giving me the full story, because then I can look at it and be like, oh, this is an interesting topic here. This is like, we can go in here. I can relate to this. Where if someone's like, yeah, man, I want to be on your podcast. Like, this is my link. And I'm like, great. Like, I guess I can check out your link, but I won't really know a lot about you because now you're forcing me to do some research, which again, some people like, do your research. I'm like, that's fair. But then there are times where I'm like, you're coming on my show. Like, I want you to tell me what kind of things you want me to ask, or what you, just so, everyone walks away happy. Where in contrast, someone walks away and was like, man, he didn't ask me about my disability. I'm like, because you didn't tell me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's very interesting because, like, like we kind of put out a PR thing where it's like, it's about the current single, and then sometimes it's like goes off on a wild tangent or whatever the case may be, and it's.
I find it really hard too because I don't like I always feel like it's a braggy thing. Like some things are like, it's like, yes, we've accomplished a lot and I'm really proud of it, but at the same time, it's like, depending on how we write it, sometimes I feel weird about it. I'm like, oh. Does that come across as like being full of yourself? And then I have to be like, well, no, we actually did those things. It's just it's so strange. It's like so strange.
Yeah, like it's funny because in the world you live in now, it's like when we were talking earlier about cancel culture, it's like it's how sometimes it's worded. Like it could be the right message. It's just how it's worded. Like I know from graduating from a sports journalism program, they taught us like, she was teaching us how to write up resumes. And I was always kind of on the mindset, and maybe it's an East Coast thing. I don't know. Sometimes if I go to Ontario, there's a little bit like I'm sure they're like well established, or like these are things they're happy to be talking about, but it's the way that it gets presented at times. And so we were writing up a resume and she's like, I want you to write up your resume, but you can't say I. Like you can't use I did this, I did that. I'm like, oh, that's so hard. And I'm like, I just like passed in like a blank piece of paper. I'm like, she's like, so you've accomplished nothing. I'm like, I did, but I have to say it. Like, I did this, I did that. She's like, here, I'm going to show you a different way of approaching it. I'm like, okay. And then I think at the end of it, she just got mad at me because I was like, man, all this sounds like bragging. And she's like, no, it's not bragging. These are your accomplishments. These are what people want to know. And I'm like, that sounds great, but can't they just ask me that? And then she just threw up the paper. She's like, I can't help you. And I'm just like, okay, thank you.
I feel like that would be me too. I'd be like, I just can't do this. Like,
I like to embellish.
Like I feel like you'd go into like, you're willing to present yourself in a great way. Like when you send off to PR or in a job interview where you're like, I was a top public speaker, I was this, I was that. And they're like, man, it's a lot of eyes. But like the way she was presenting it is you could say like, during my time at like high school, I ranked number 3 in public speaking when I went here. So it's not so much it's like you're telling a story, but at the same point, like I'm still telling a story about myself. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, let them ask you the question and then figure it out. But it's kind of like a humble brag in a way.
It's so difficult though, because it's like, yes, all these things were great, but then I always want to say like not that there's a negative, but like, let's say it was public speaking. Okay. So I got number 1, but there was only 3 people. Like that would be something that I would have to say if that was the truth. Like in my head, I'd be like, okay, I got number 1, but like, it's not really that big of a deal because there was only like 3 people in it. Like, that's how my brain works, instead of just being like, no, but that's still a fact, and that's still what happened, and you don't have to be negative about it. But my brain is always like, yeah, but they don't know the full thing. Like, you have to tell them everything, and it's like,
well, some people
doesn't take away the accomplishment at the end of the day.
The perfect example to go off that. So we've had Robin Ottolini on, who has a song F-150 now. It's like it went really big on TikTok and in Canadian country. I think it's like top 10 now. But when I was talking to her in the interview, they have like a Boots and Hearts festival, which I kind of make it sound like, not in a disrespectful way, but like same as an ECMA Rising Star, because when you're on a Boots and Hearts stage in Ontario, it's like 3 or 4 years down the road, you can be getting nominated for an award, sort of like an ECMA. Yeah. And I said to her, wow, you got runner-up. And then some people would be like, yeah, I got runner-up. It's great. And then she was like, yeah, but in fairness, she's like, she's like, that says that on Wikipedia, but she's like, there's 2 runner-ups. It's basically like there was a winner and everyone else was a runner-up. And I'm like, okay, that's a really good way of putting it. Like in your sense, the same way. It's like, hey, context here. 1 winner, and there could have been 5 of us. All the rest of us are runner-ups. Like we didn't get 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. It was you all runner-up. This is the winner. I'm like,
right.
Okay.
So I would put that negative spin on it, which is really terrible, because you should just be like, but you were nominated, and that's what you should be looking at. Like, it's awesome. It's like, it is, but so were like 25 million other people. I don't know.
I can.
Jordan's opposite. He's a positive.
Yeah, I try and put the positive spin on stuff, because I think when you look at it, it's like, as a musician, like you're only a part of a subset of people who write songs. You're or a songwriter, because you don't have to be a songwriter and a musician. You could be one or the other if you wanted to. So it's like, each one of those things, it's not that it just puts you into a niche market. Like the same as if you wanted to be a specialist in a doctor, like if you're a heart surgeon, you're not going to put down that you can also do family practitioner, because that's not the job that you want. Right. Like, and so I think for us, like that's kind of where we put ourselves, is like, okay, well, like now when we apply for stuff, it's like we were Music and L's Group of the Year, or we were, we had some charting stuff, or whatever it is. Like those accolades they put you in an echelon with other artists similar to you. And if you don't do that, then I find it's harder to find an audience or to grow or to find a booker who's looking for specifically folk artists at this level of career.
I've had all of these,
right? It's like it's kind of like the catch-22. Like I like how both of you have a different dynamic on it, but like again, agreeing to compromise in a way, because you have to, in like Jordan's sense there, of putting in these accolades and accomplishments, so people like that might stand out to you. Like if I sent out, say, an email to you guys tomorrow, I was like, hey, come join my Tobin Tonight podcast, and it's like you're like, oh, okay, it's like it's a local podcast, blah, blah, blah. But then if I put in like more accolades of like, hey, we're like #1 in Canada, blah, 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 like it still gives you that mindset of like, okay, geez, we can't just slack off here in this interview. Like we have to come kind of prepared, and like it's all in how it's worded. But it doesn't really, like the interviewer itself could be like, I don't care, like whatever. Right. Like me as a host, someone could come to me tomorrow and be like, Brian, did you know like you're the #1 podcast in Newfoundland? I'm like, yeah, because there's probably like only 2. It's like
right. Like, and I'm like,
and that's me.
I keep that information to myself. Like that's the thing. Yeah. Like I'm like, okay, like
okay. Be like, yeah, but it's #1, and I would be that person to be like, yeah, cool, out of 2. Like, and I would totally want to say that if someone said that to me in an interview, and was like, oh my gosh, you're #1 out of, or you're the #1, whatever. Yeah. Like I'd have to stop myself from saying that. It's all like marketing. Like I think I've seen ones where on like social media or like listening to ads, say on iHeart, like because I listen to like a lot of iHeart 90s, iHeart 2000s, and it's funny because iHeart will advertise #1 in podcasting, and it's like no, it's like, let's get this straight. You bought out the #1 person in podcasting because you had the money, making you now #1, right?
And then I did the vice versa with my hands, but okay. But it's like I will listen to some of these iHeart radio, like 90s, whatever, and they'll plug podcasts, and it's like, we are the #1, and not that this is a legit one, but it's like, we're the #1 in dog grooming podcasts. I'm like, well, how many #1 dog grooming podcasts out there? And it gets like, they'll make it even smaller and smaller, like we're the #1 dog grooming podcast in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the district of, and I'm like, yeah, now you're really just labeling it as like that's like me coming on here like right now and saying I am the #1 podcast in Witless Bay, Newfoundland, And they're like, well, number one, how many podcasts are in Witless Bay, Newfoundland? I'm like,
Right.
only one. And
Right.
I'm in. Like,
but who like, and I think, you know, to speak to some of the evils of marketing and stuff like that, like, I was watching Good Mythical Morning yesterday, and they were doing something about lasagna, and like the Stouffer's lasagna has the biggest meat to cheese ratio or something ridiculous like that. But that's what they were bragging about. That was like their selling point. But when you go look at the actual standards of it, it was like they created the standard.
yeah.
You know, so it was like, of course they're going to be number one because no one else is even on this list of things that you can, for meat to cheese ratio of lasagna. But like, I just think about it from that perspective as like people who are just going to glance over stuff and be like, oh, cool. Like they were, you know, group of year, blah, blah, blah. Like it could have been 25 years ago, you know, like it's a matter of like just grabbing someone's attention who might not grab your attention. The people who want to engage with you and want to talk to you, like, for us, like we just want to chat with you know, like we enjoy chatting with people. We enjoy getting out there and like that is the highlight of music for us is touring and meeting new people and seeing the world in that sense. So it's like, if that's what we can do, awesome. If we need to shine up our resume so that the presenter who doesn't really care about that thing is going to book us, that's kind of what the job entails at the time, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the music will speak for itself. People are either going to like it or they're not, regardless of what the headline says or what the first sentence of your resume says. It's like, even if we say, oh, we're Newfoundland's Group of the Year, you know, if they listen to our music and they don't like it, doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So it's like, those things are great to grab people's attention. And hopefully they stay because the music is good, because that's really what it comes down to.
Well, yeah, I think it's like it's all a matter of building a core fan base. Like you're always going to have the ones that kind of jump on, jump off, depending on if they like a certain song or whatnot. Like I know artists from say the early 90s to 2000s where you're like, I'm always going to love this band, and then like later on, like they just disband, or you're like, they only had like 2 or 3 good songs. Okay, and it's like, but you said you'd always be a fan. I'm like, yeah, and there could be people that are still lifelong fans. And then there's other ones that I feel like it's okay to be a little bit of, you can be a diehard or you can jump on and off. Like for me, I will give the example of, well, it's fair because everyone will say, I had a friend that once used to say, every artist at least has some good songs, some bad songs, but it depends on how committed you are. Like I think I have a whole iPod or even my iPhone that has full of just say, the 1975, All Time Low, Fall Out Boy. Like there are some that people will be like, I don't like this song. I'm like, that's fair. You don't have to. And I'm not overly picky on it either, but I still kind of like it. There are songs by 1975 that I'm like, I don't like it, but I still like the band. And there's other ones that someone will be like, why do you have like 2 Miley songs on your like iPhone? I'm like, because they're 2 Miley songs I like. It's like, okay. It's like, do you like Miley as a person? I'm like, yeah, sure. But it's like, do I like say 95% of her songs? Maybe not, but these 2 I do. That's just that's like my example. Like in fairness, I probably have more than 2 Miley songs on my thing, but
that's fair.
I do.
She has some really great songs. I love her voice too.
Yeah, like to kind of get into, I guess, a little bit of the ECMA side. Now we've told all acts, and I'll do the whole spiel. It's like when you go to like a principal's office, or like when you're reading instructions. So like, here are the rules to this podcast. So the rule that I tell everyone here, just so that they don't get the wrong light, and I'm kind of giving them an oust as well, is we get it. It's COVID. It's hard to get things done. No one's blaming the ECMAs or Music NL or this podcast. They can come at me. I don't care. But it's like, we get it. It's a pandemic. Things are hard to get done. We've had other acts on that have said the same. Like sometimes it's a little bit frustrating of, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing for the ECMAs? Am I doing it in person? Are you getting me to record it? Are we doing it live? Are we doing it the Bill O'Reilly way where we don't actually know, but we're going to just so fuck it, we're doing it live. So tell me a little bit, I guess, in your own words, did anyone give you an update on the ECMAs? Like, what are you guys doing? It's like, has anyone said anything to you of like, we've got you recording? Are you still up in the loop? What's on the go?
Right. So we're full-time musicians, unlike a lot of people in the province, just because of the way, you know, I say this all the time. A lot of music professionals have to work a 40-hour-a-week job in order to pay for their music career, you know, and we just kind of made a lot of sacrifices in life so that we could make this our full-time job. So for us to go to ECMAs when it was possible, without, we didn't mind quarantining for 2 weeks come back to Newfoundland.
I mean, it would suck, but we could do it because we don't have a job to go
to. We were in a position to do that.
Yeah,
So that was our original plan, and as soon as the Nova Scotia stuff kind of closed, we updated our plan to kind of say, we've got a really nice showcase that we shot with Music NL that we're gonna incorporate with our ECMA showcase, and we're super excited.
So as of right now, it's the pre-recorded set, but that was like a really pretty last minute decision. Like I feel like this only happened like last week.
Yeah, it was definitely
I think when we made our final decision. I think there was so much stuff kind of up in the air, so it was kind of hard to figure out what was going on. But I don't really think it was the ECMA's fault, especially like last week, just because of all of the different restrictions and stuff in Nova Scotia. There was really nothing that they could do at that point. I think it was it was a bit of a scramble for sure, but I think everyone's sort of on the same page now, and I think it is probably the best decision though.
Definitely. Yeah. I think, we've been kind of planning with the same mindset. It's just the two of us, so life's a bit easier. We've got a couple shows planned for June in Nova Scotia and PEI, and that's fully dependent on the Atlantic bubble. So
we're sort of full steam ahead until someone tells us no.
Right.
It's like, okay,
I think
change your mind then.
I think the pandemic's kind of taught us to be less precious about losing a gig or an opportunity, because I think before, like even like 2018 when we first started touring all over like Eastern Canada and stuff, like if we lost a gig, I know I would freak out because I'd be like, oh, we'll never play there again, or whatever the mindset was, and that was probably never the case, but I'd never want to leave a bad taste in anybody's mouth, and I know like there's things completely out of my control that people would not have any hard feelings about, but I've always been of the mindset to like make it happen somehow.
Yeah.
But COVID's kind of taught me that like shit happens. So
especially when it's out of
completely
anyone's control.
Yeah.
So
I like how you said about leaving like a bad taste in your mouth, or like leaving bad taste in people's mouths, because immediately I was thinking of like, okay, what's something that's like a bad taste in someone's mouth? So imagine if you had to get up on stage and be like, we are the black licorice of music.
Like black licorice.
My girlfriend loves it, and I'm like, stay away from me while you're eating them goodies. I can't.
It's like, imagine just doing that, like walk up on stage and be like, we are the black licorice of music. People would be like, I don't know if that's like love or hate.
Yeah. You either get super fans,
like 5 people in the audience is like, yeah.
Well, if you had to say we are like the sour nibs of music, I'd be like, oh my god, so that means like we can never get them anymore. They're only going to show up here once, and we're going to love them, but at the same point, we're going to want them all the time, to the point where they're going to get annoyed. Love sour.
Be a seasonal thing.
Yeah. I remember when you used to go to the theaters, and like I used to pack up on, say, like I think they had like sour Jolly Ranchers, which were like candy.
Yeah.
When we used to have Pizza Hut down here, and like, now this is way back, but I used to like.
I remember.
I used to love how people, like, you're kind of with everything in life, you go from being a rookie to a vet real soon. Where I used to go in there and be like, man, I gotta like spend a fortune of getting pizza. Like the movie's already started. And then like one of my friends was like, yo, there's a lot, and it's like right down there. Go get your drink, sneak it in, and then like get in the lineup now before the movie even starts, so that by the time that it starts, maybe in the previews, and I'm like, oh my god, how did I not think of this? Because we used to go watch wrestling events, and I used to be like, I don't want to miss an opening match, but they'd be like, don't worry about it. There's going to be like noobs in there playing SmackDown versus Raw on the big screen. I'm like, but I want to be the noob that plays that.
I was that noob. I was obsessed. Being able to play that on the big screen was the coolest thing. Yeah. And me and my buddies, we were the assholes. Like, I think it was like Shut Your Mouth or whatever it was. Like, Here Comes the Pain. And we would stack the tables, which takes like 20 minutes. And it was like this glitch, we were just like, let's glitch it out in front of everybody who's annoyed that we've took 20 minutes of their time to like.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm just sitting here like,
We'll get Kirsten back in here, but it's like at the same point, to kind of close off, to kind of go off that point, it's like there's actually a lot of people who stream like the old stuff. I don't follow them anymore because they kind of got mad at me because I pointed out something to them. But it was like New Legacy Inc. I think it's like CM Pulse. It could be just Pulse now, but they play the old games, and I like watching them stream it. And I'm out there now when like once these interviews are done, I'll go back and play SmackDown versus Raw like with John Cena just because I want to be whatever. But the storylines were all the same, so I'm like, oh, I'm bored. But we're gonna bring it full circle to get her back in this interview because she's looking at us like,
no, I'm amused, but I have no idea what you're talking about. Like,
I got the PlayStation 2 set up for after this interview is over.
Yeah. I feel like, you know what's going to happen after this interview is over? It's going to be like, I don't know what the hell we're talking about, but I think Brian made a friend in Jordan. I'm like, that's all that matters to me. To kind of close off the interview here, I want to talk a little bit about, because we're getting ready to prep for another one right after this, and I want to make sure, because Facebook's going to be like, you're going live. I'm like, well, I'm not done this one. So just to kind of close it off, what are some things that you want people to know about you guys, like that haven't experienced your music? Now, of course, when they see this interview, they're going to be like, oh, those are some fun, happy-go-lucky people. And I'll be like, yeah, they're like the Newfoundland Friends. But, you know, they didn't go on a break. They were not your Ross and Rachel. But tell people.
I don't know. The interview's not done yet.
Tell people like that maybe don't know a lot about you, what they can expect. And if you don't mind me throwing this in as well, where did the name Quote the Raven come from?
So to get that out of the way, literally from Edgar Allan Poe. I used to be a big poetry fan growing up, and it is Quoth the Raven Nevermore, but we tried to just make it a little bit more modern by taking out the H and putting an E there.
Yeah, Jordan had like so many band name suggestions at first, and I shot them all down. And when he said Quoth the Raven, I was like, I knew where it come from, but I kind of thought, you know, it sounds very, you know, like old language, and I don't know, I don't want anyone to think that we're like a poetry reading, although that is great. Like that's not what we do. Or a heavy metal band. We've got that a couple times too. So, you know, I was like, oh, if we can change it to Quote, I'm good with that. So we did that. Now, not everyone loves that.
No,
we've had a few people just be like, that's not right though. That's not right, and they just can't let it go. And I'm like, too late. We can't go back.
No, it's stuck now. It's on all of our merch and our t-shirts.
Yeah. And
just when people come up to you at events with the merch, you just like take a permanent marker and be like, there, Quote. And then they're like, thank you so much.
We have had to explain ourselves a couple of times to like literary scholars, and I'm like, I respect you. So it's, you know, it's just it's not that. It's literally just so it's not the same as what it is. And I think that was enough rationale for us, so it stuck. But I don't know. Like when you come see us play, like it's a bit of a comedy show. Like we make fun of each other all the time, and
which some people don't like either. But but yeah, our banter is quite
self-deprecating.
Different. Yeah, but very different from the songs, because although we're, you know, starting to write happier tunes, for a while there we were, I guess, very sad humans.
Very melancholy.
Everybody hurts.
So we play a lot of sad songs, and then in between we try to brighten the mood, and it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's usually just the two of us and a guitar. We're trying to do some more gigs now with like fuller bands, so we can kind of do both, and yeah, like our music is sort of Americana is what we say now. Like for a while there, we didn't really know what genre we were, which I think is the nice thing about music now, is everyone can be kind of everything. Yeah. But you know, we're definitely like folk, and then some of our songs are a bit more country
and poppy,
and some are super catchy, so they're sort of more pop. So I mean, we're just kind of like a bit of everything. We sing whatever we want. We don't really care what genre it is.
No.
There you go. There's your next song right there. We don't really care.
We don't really care.
Quote the Raven.
If we could tell anybody anything.
Yeah, it's like, we don't really care. Quote the Raven, nothing more. They're like, oh my God, there's so much wrong with that. It's not quote, and they should care. It's like, you see like 3 people walk out of your show, and it's like Jacob is leaving. It's like, you don't need to put any is anymore, Jacob. But it just says
Right.
Jacob leaving. I'm like, yeah. Jacob out.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Quote the Raven for coming on to the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying, thanks for listening, and good night.